Hey everyone, and welcome to Found Friday. I'm your host, Erin Robbins O'Brien, COO of Ginza Metrics, and joining me today I have VP of Marketing and friend, Sandra Ponce de Leon. Sandra is currently the VP of Marketing at Trunx, which is a photo app, and I'm going to let her talk a lot more about that, and obviously doing an amazing job because I've heard a ton about you guys recently. So Sandra, why don't you start out by telling us a little bit about what you're doing at Trunx and a little bit about your kind of marketing history as well.
Sure. Well, Trunx, as you said, it's an app and it's a photo app that allows you to store all of your visual legacy in the cloud. We organize it for you and we make it accessible to you so you can pull up a picture from 2004 at any time. We also have features for collaborative sharing, private sharing with friends and family. And yeah, we're having a lot of fun doing that. As you mentioned, I'm the VP of Marketing. Actually, yesterday we just had a new release for Trunx 3.0. So we're really excited about that. And in terms of my previous background in marketing, I have a very broad, extensive background. I've been doing this, oh my gosh, I don't want to say how long, but it's been over a decade. And I started out in the B2B world, marketing for different ad companies and ad platforms. And from there, I had a marketing consultancy. So we worked with various clients, clients that were in the mobile space. And that really is what drew me to mobile and consumer marketing. That's really where I found my passion in mobile consumer marketing. But I do have a lot of experience on the B2B side as well, working for different SaaS platforms, both on the social software side as well as innovation management. And yeah, so it's been great. It's been great to get such a broad perspective and really kind of leverage experience from both worlds into each other.
It's crazy because I know that when you say you don't want to say how long it's been, I know that I have known you for, I think, 7 or 8 years, which blows my mind, knowing that I'd already been at it for a few years when we met. So there are a lot of reasons I wanted to have you on the show. The first is that visual content is freaking booming, and everybody's trying to do it. And if you ask me, honestly, people are just making a mess of it in a lot of different ways. And the second is your experience in marketing is vast, and I kind of want your input on kind of bridging the gap between B2B and B2C marketing, and specifically some of the differences in becoming a marketer in like the app space, because that is a really growing market. There are a lot of people who would probably be interested in doing that and may not feel that their skills could translate, so maybe you'll have some good advice for them.
Yeah.
I want to start out with like the rise of photos and photo apps, because Trunx is certainly not the only app in the market space, but you guys are growing and doing a really good job. So a big question on everyone's mind is security, security of their images, security not just from a what happens if I take private photos and they get shared, but like how do I know that my images are really stored? Do I ever really want to delete them off of a device? People are nervous. Getting rid of photo albums as a general thing kind of freaks people out, I think. So how do you discuss security with consumers or users, and do you really feel like there is real trust between users and brands?
I think that's a great question, and I think, as you mentioned, with the rise of so many photos, so many pictures that we're taking on our devices nowadays, and again, a lot of the recent events that we've been experiencing, everything from Celebgate to some of the breaches that you've seen with Facebook, with Snapchat, etc. So I think consumers are definitely very aware of this issue, and they're really looking for brands that not only talk the talk but walk the walk. So, for us, security and privacy has always been at the core of our core values, at the center of our core values. And so that's something that we not only strive to educate our consumers on in terms of how we actually pay that off in terms of the encryption that we use both on the storage as well as the transmission of the images. So we do talk a lot about that. And then, also just, making sure that we are in front of these issues as they come up. For example, when the Celebgate issue came up, our CEO did issue a notice to our users talking about how important security and privacy of those images, of our users' images, are to us. But you're right. I think that people are increasingly weary of brands and how brands are using their images. You've got Facebook that is, able to use your images in advertising or other types of, we see be, if you've got your images that are publicly available, we've got people that have their images showing up as billboards in other countries. So it is really important to be careful and to make sure that you're putting the images in a place that's safe and secure. And Facebook isn't necessarily always the right platform for that, because I think people are so confused about the privacy settings in Facebook. So it really is confusing. I think people are just defaulting to a social setting or social sharing, and they don't necessarily know the implications of that, but they are concerned.
I think it's interesting to mention kind of the confusion aspect of things, because when we're talking about there's a really big difference between what maybe, let's say, people in the demographic of 25 to 30 and younger, or people who live in the Silicon Valley area or in New York maybe really understand in terms of technology. But to really gain user traction, you have to look beyond those markets and be available to a broader user base. And a big part of that is education, right? I mean, educating users about why something like cloud storage for their photos and not just device-based storage is really important. In terms of trying to educate people, how do you see that going? Like, I mean, I'm sure you guys have been, I've looked at your site, and I think it's great and super informative and really easy to understand the core product values. Do you think that there's still a lot of confusion about what exactly cloud-based storage versus device-based storage is to people?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the cloud is this, no pun intended, this nebulous thing that people don't really understand. And I think that there is a lot of education that needs to happen on the consumer front. And then, there's also a lot of education around the cloud storage. Is not all cloud storage is the same. Some cloud storage doesn't have the same kind of security aspects that other cloud storage providers also have. So I think it is important to educate yourself as a consumer to understand the different nuances between the offerings that you're seeing, and why, if you lose your device, how that could be susceptible to someone getting a hold of all of your images, and how, if you're looking for a cloud provider, you really want you want to seek out a provider that is really paying a lot of attention to especially encryption of the images, and especially encrypting the images in a way that doesn't make them vulnerable should one offering or one platform get hacked or another. So that's something that we do pay a lot of attention to, and we talk a lot about. So we have continuous blog posts out there telling our consumers exactly how we treat their images. So it's something that is really important. It's something that people are still confused about, and it's just something that we have to, as marketers, continue to educate our consumers about.
I feel a T-shirt or cartoon series called The Nebulous Cloud coming on, by the way, because it does seem funny. So I want to talk a little bit about, because you are a marketer working with a photo app. The old adage of a picture being worth 1,000 words, and Facebook is certainly capitalizing on this idea, is the pressure on marketers to choose the right image and to make sure that every image that they use accurately represents either the message or the brand, or even just things like continuity and consistency in image style choices, right? Like flipping back and forth between color and black and white, or illustration and photo tends to really confuse consumers a lot because they don't have anything to really concretely associate with your brand. When it comes to stuff at Trunx specifically, how do you choose kind of the style in which you guys convey yourself visually?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, we are a photocentric brand. I think one of the things that we really try to do is to paint a story with the images that we use. For example, the vast majority of the images that we use are actually done by real-world photographers. And if you look at some of the screenshots that you'll see in the App Store, that we've really tried to paint a picture or tell a story. The couple that you see is actually a local photographer here in the Bay Area. So we actually partnered with him, and it's great because we actually see their story come to life in the images. So you see the timeline, you see when they were a young couple, and you see as they're relationship develops, and then they eventually get married. And this is actually true. We are using their real images. So that's something that we really wanted to have, an authentic storyline, one that really conveys, what people experience in their life, really all the different stages that someone goes through. Our goal is to be the world's largest memory bank in the world, and so in order to play off that, that's contains a lot of your history, a lot of your memories, and so we really wanted the imagery that we use to play into that.
It is interesting to think about the photos and the app and the storage of all that as kind of a memory bank. I know that for a lot of us that are in this 30s and above kind of age bracket, that we have images stored in so many different places, right? Like we've got old pictures from photo albums that unfortunately get damaged with age, right? I mean, the actual quality of the image degrades over time. We've got VHS tapes, we've got CD-ROMs, we've got DVD nonsense. There's so many different places. And then you've got actual old devices, right, that before everything did get loaded up onto your computer, that things are possibly stored there. Like I actually have a digital camera that the memory card is stuck in, and I still have the camera in case I ever do manage to get these images back. But because things are stored in so many different formats and volumes, I think that this is also causing a lot of, as you mentioned, wariness on the side of a consumer saying, I don't know if I want one more place to store things. I don't know, is this going to change again in 5 years or in 10 years? Is it going to evolve again? When it comes to alleviating fear from people about hey, these things will always be accessible and they're here to stay. Do you have any thoughts on kind of talking to people in a way that makes them feel comforted about this isn't going to just become another antiquated technology?
Yeah, I think that from the beginning, one of the things that we've tried to do is to let our consumers know that we don't have a short window on an exit strategy for the business. The founders of the company actually have other businesses that they've run for a long time, over 10 years, on the part of our founder and the other company that he runs. So that's something that's always been important for us to convey, is that we're not in it for the short term, we're in it for the long haul, and we want to build a lasting, sustainable business with our consumers. And there's certainly things that we need to do better in order to really pay off on that trust. It's something that we want to build internally. So one of the things is, giving consumers the ability to get all of their images out of Trunx. That's something that we actually still need to work on, but it's something we do intend to do. So I think by allowing people to have that, always having their images always accessible to them on their phone, it's actually such a beautiful thing when I can go and I can look at those pictures from 2002 and 2004 or 2007, I think, when we met, and pull up an image and say, hey, Erin, remember this? This is where we met. I think that that's an amazing thing, and we want to make sure that consumers feel comfortable with the fact that those images are always going to be safe. So we do talk a lot about that as well, and we intend to also build that into our offering so that it does give consumers a sense of security, knowing that they can always get those pictures back whenever they want to.
So, I mean, beyond just kind of the photo situation, but from your experience over the years, kind of throughout the marketing gamut, what are some of the major differences you're seeing in terms of marketers' actual use of visual content, photos and videos and things like that? I mean, I remember even just 5 or 10 years ago, a lot of people had to rely on stock photography and imagery because that was what was available. But now that everybody is a photographer, everybody has a camera on them all the time, everybody can take videos with their phones, it feels like there are so many more choices.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, as I mentioned, we use stock photography as well, but we really like the idea of working with photographers. So we actually go out to local photographers and we ask them to work with us at different events. One of the features that we have is called a shared pics, and that's what that is a collaborative photo album. So we've actually been hiring photographers to come with us and to shoot different festivals like Outside Lands. So we love the idea of working with local local photographers, and there is, to your point, just no shortage of photographers out there that are trying to make a living at capturing images. So that's one approach. Obviously the stock photo imagery is another approach, and then there's other brands that just get real rugged and want to use images that their consumers are putting up there. That's another way, is really leveraging the community, giving them the tools or giving them the incentive to promote your brand with their own visual media, and really just in inviting them to participate as well.
I feel like that's it's probably a conversation for another time. It's such a big deal. I see so many problems with legality around people saying, hey, I want to, like, sure, you can use this image and do things with it. And then there's just matters of manipulation, how far and wide you're being spread, any sort of compensation. I think that, the legal teams at corporations are having a really tough time with a lot of this, and it extends to social media, and some of it's even pictures people are sharing while at their company, right? Like taking pictures at your desk, or taking pictures while wearing company shirts or hats or whatever. I mean, I feel like there's so much to be done there around kind of the overall way that society accepts the fact that we're all now kind of our own photographers and consumers of these images.
Right, and I think it also gets back to, your brand is not necessarily your own anymore, especially on the consumer side. And how do you leverage people that are really excited about your brand, that want to go out there and promote your brand? So how much freedom do you give them to really be a brand ambassador and represent your brand? So you do have to let go of some of that control. But yeah, it can be a scary thing for some marketers, especially the ones with the big legal departments that are watching everything that the marketing team puts out. They have to protect the company as well. But yeah, there's a lot of loss of control on that front.
So, I mean, in terms of marketing, now that you've kind of moved from a more B2B focus to B2C, what does the marketing team at Trunx look like?
So the marketing team is composed of myself, a director of marketing. We also have a community manager and a community and support manager, and then we have 2 designers as well. So we're a pretty small, lean team. Sometimes we do have an intern that also helps us out. So that's really the majority, but we're very small, very collaborative, and it's a lot of fun.
So do you find that kind of making the move from being a more B2B marketer to being B2C, especially on the app side, what does measurement for your marketing team look like, and kind of how did you get aligned with, if those metrics are different, which I assume some of them are, like how did you get kind of aligned with new metrics as a marketer?
Sure. I mean, well, in our world, it all comes down to installs. How many installs, how many users, what are the monthly actives looking like? On the B2B front, depending on what what it is you're actually selling and doing, it's about conversion rates and lead funnels, and how is the funnel looking? How are you going from different stages in the funnel, from being a lead to getting into a sales conversation to actually closing? And those funnels are take quite a long time. So I think that that's one of the major differences. But I do think that there's a lot of similarities in that there's still nurture B2B. On the B2B front, you can have email nurturing programs that actually walk your consumer through the different life cycles of the purchase cycle. And then on the consumer side, that's also very similar. So we take that same approach, and we've developed a system of different emails to get the consumer not only familiar with the brand, familiar with our value prop, and ultimately into a conversion and using the product itself.
What does engagement look like when you're talking about, I assume that because you guys have a site and you're also found in the App Store, that you're measuring metrics kind of in a similar way that a B2C marketer might, which is, page views and kind of interaction and where all they're going, and things like bounce rate, and of course conversion from the site, right? So when you're looking at things like that, do you find it difficult to make the jump from people who visit the website to people who then go to the App Store on their phone?
Yeah, absolutely. Because one of the things, unfortunately, that gets lost, especially with the App Store, the iOS App Store, is that once it goes into Apple, it's actually a black box. So you don't necessarily you know how much traffic you're driving to the App Store, but you don't necessarily know which one of those is actually converting. So it can be a challenge. It really just is a matter. The way that we approach it, in fact, is we take a look at our marketing calendar, and so we know the different events, and so there is, the actual hard numbers in terms of installs that we see. It increases, depending on different campaigns that we're running. So that's one way. But it isn't I think that in marketing we keep trying to get to that exact science, those exact numbers, and sometimes they just can't be found.
Do you think that it's more or less difficult to kind of draw that one-to-one point between a marketing campaign and an increase in user signups or conversions from the app side versus like B2B?
Yeah, I would definitely say so. Specifically because of the nuances of the app world, and how a lot of the information gets lost once it goes into the App Store. Android is a little bit different. I think we have a little bit better idea there in terms of the one-to-one experience. But yeah, I mean, in terms of B2B marketing, it is mostly through the web. You can see your conversion stats from your website to your registration forms. You can see how many people are attending your webinars, and you then, those people actually get into a sales process where you're actually following that lead in a CRM like a Salesforce, and so you're seeing, that you can see the beginning touch point, and then you can see the actual conversion to a sale. With app marketing, it's much different. You don't necessarily have that one-to-one ratio unless you've got, some of the, if you're working with an ad network, for example, then you've got some of the information in the SDK that does show you exactly, which networks are driving those installs. So you do have those exact numbers on certain fronts and not on others.
So you mentioned earlier, working with an executive team that really has kind of a long haul vision. How do you work with them to make sure that you're setting up the right goals and metrics, knowing that a lot of this information is really, really hard to find, or that you may have it in some fronts and not in others, right? Which means you're kind of getting bits and pieces, and sometimes you're probably just guessing or trying to make inferences based on other numbers as to what might be happening. What does that conversation look like, and how receptive do you find your team to be when you have to say, like, look, we don't know, right?
Yeah, I mean, you never want to say you don't know. I mean, you've got anecdotal data that really does direct you and give you a good idea of how you're doing. But from our perspective, we measure everything. We measure how many installs we're getting. We're measuring how many people are in certain areas of the app. Very similar to a website. You want to know what the navigation looks like. We want to know how people are navigating through the app, where they're going from one point to the next, very similar to a website as well, and what the drop-off rates are, what the return rates are, how often are people returning, and then again, another key metric for us is a conversion rate. When people actually install the app, there's still a second point of conversion where they actually have to give us their email address and then convert to an actual user, or actually pull pictures into the app. So we do measure all of those different metrics along the way to determine how we're doing. And then, in some areas we do have exact numbers. In the case when we're doing advertising, we'll be able to tell exactly how many installs a particular publisher, developer sent us, or network. And then in other cases, we know that we participated in an event, and we knew that we grew. We saw a 5% rise in our installs that over that time period. So we attribute it to that event.
Do you see, so I know that right now Trunx is predominantly focused on consumer photo storage and sharing and having that. Do you ever see a use case or a future for marketers being able to use the app for anything?
It's funny you say that, because internally we actually do use it for a number of business purposes. For example, we use the Shared Pics album, and that's it's a private album. It's a private collaborative album. So It's great because we can all contribute to it. So we've got an inspiration shared pics. We also have a bug shared pics. So whenever I do encounter a bug in an early version before it goes to market, I'll add that to the shared pics album. My engineers have immediate access to it. I can add video to it. And another thing that we also do is it's a feature called Echo Pics, which allows you to capture photos with sound. I've used it frequently going to conferences and not wanting to hold my phone up the entire time, capturing video, and also video because of the, how much storage it takes up on your phone. So I use Echo Pics to, basically be my note taker, and then I'll add that to an album that I do share internally with my marketing team as well. So I think that there's a lot of different use cases for using a product like Trunx, internally with your team, and my personal use case, I also take pictures of receipts. I add those. So I think that there's a lot more in terms of what photos can do. Photos are much more than just an image. They're also a visual cue, a reminder of something that maybe I want to come back to.
I like the idea of using it as a collaboration tool. I know that personally working, at a technology company where I do a lot of the frontline QA for new product releases and bugs and things, there's so much to be done to say, like, hey, this is exactly what I'm experiencing and somebody can't replicate it. So being able to upload it to a bugs folder and saying, hey, I'm literally going to walk you through exactly what I'm seeing. I do realize that there are screen sharing and things like that for that exact thing. I love the idea of there being a folder full of it because it means that everybody can access it in one place and that it's always going to be there. It's not stuck in an engineering tool, like let's say Pivotal Tracker or Trello or whatever, that you may change, right? Like say you want to change platforms and then maybe a lot of this stuff is stored in one place. So I love the idea of using it for that. Echo Pic sounds awesome. I love the idea of taking a picture of someone and then being able to have sound bites from them. I feel like that could be a really useful thing as a marketer. There's so much kind of left to be explored, I think, in this arena that I think we're going to see so much more innovation, from photo and video. One of the things that we also are seeing a lot of, and I'm sure you guys see a lot of, is photo editing. A ton of things around there. Where do you guys stand right now in kind of like the editing of photos kind of in apps, and how do you feel about kind of the photo manipulation market out there right now?
I mean, it's something that we don't do. It's certainly something that we see as a request coming from our customers, but there's so many editing tools out there. We really didn't want to recreate the wheel. We probably, if we do incorporate editing features, we would partner with an established company that already has those built. We want to focus on really what our core values are, which are storage and security and privacy. So those are the things that we're focused on from a product perspective. But yeah, I mean, I think that I love to edit and manipulate my photos, and I'm a huge Instagram user. I mean, I think I post 1 or 2 pictures to Instagram a day, and so I do have a lot of editing tools I use. I think that it's, some of the interesting, fun tools are, when you can actually put, an overlay of text onto your photos. So that might even be another way to, write a visual reminder to yourself. Hey, you can use it with Echo Pics as well. You can give yourself an audio reminder, but maybe you want to write something on top of the photo that says, come back to this. Don't forget about this. This is an inspiration that I want to discuss with my product team. So I think that there's a lot of things that can be done with the editing and manipulation of photos, and we love it. It's very complementary to what we offer.
So for people out there that are in the marketing world that maybe want to move from B2B to B2C, or that maybe want to move from their current position into app marketing, do you have any suggestions or words of wisdom on effectively making the transition?
I mean, I think it's a matter of really, getting yourself out there and talking to as many people as you can. Networking is so important, and luckily for us in the tech industry, I think a lot of people are very open to talking to new marketers, people that want to break into the business, and so I think you really have to take advantage of, that spirit in the startup world, especially. And when it comes to mobile marketing, I mean, there's so many resources out there. And I think that kind of thinking through, there's differences obviously in mobile marketing versus B2B marketing, but there's also a lot of similarities and parallels. I mean, you think about developing a brand and how important that is. That's both B2B and B2C. When you think about PR and getting your name out there in different news publications, that's just as important on the consumer front as on the business front. Things like SEO, the app equivalent of SEO is actually, it's called ASO. And so that's App Store optimization. So there's a lot of parallels, and I think it's just focusing in on and honing in on those, as well as talking to as many people as you can, and just I mean, I think just having a sense of enthusiasm and delight and passion. I think that really can shine through in your conversations and be a real asset in terms of really landing that dream job if you're looking to make the transition.
I will ditto that passion is something that we look for from people that may not have a ton of experience either in the SaaS space or in the SEO space, because that's a really small pool of people to draw from. But showing passion, showing enthusiasm, showing initiative is always a winning combination, because being really, really smart and not passionate or not enthusiastic about the product or about the space never ends well for anyone. So parting words before we head off is, besides Trunx app, any other favorite apps that you have?
Let's see, favorite apps. Well, I'm big into the health apps, and so I have an app called Interval Timer. I use it in conjunction with Pandora, and it helps me get through my workout. So I love that app. And, I also love Instagram, so I've loved it for years. It's probably been on my top 5 for many, many years now since it launched.
Well, I'll have to check out the interval one, because I'm always looking for better ways to get through my workout painlessly. Well, thank you so much for joining. You guys can find Trunx at trunx.me, and Sandra is on Twitter. And as always, we will follow up with a blog post for you guys to take a look at. So thank you so much for joining us, and I will catch up with you again soon.
Thank you, Erin. It's been great.
Bye, everybody. Happy Friday.